Okay. Live.
Welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting. I have a roll call, please.
Ms. Cheney,
Here.
Brewer,
Here.
Mr. Fisher,
Here.
Primer,
Here.
Mr. Michelson.
Here. I would like to know, I put forth a motion to accept this agenda, adding on the newly passed on police, what are these called? The police database request. Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry, correct, a second.
What?
I
Sorry,
forgot I was
waiting for a
supposed to wait
second.
Second.
That was a second?
Correct. Now there's
Now,
discussion on the agenda.
Okay.
In the rules of order in that special meeting, we had talked about taking off the advisors from the minutes, or from the agenda. We have a couple folks listed as advisors for the meeting.
Oh, no, that was a mistake. It's meant to be in attendance, and that was an oversight. I will.
Or, sorry, in attendance. They are not supposed to be listed though. In the special meeting, the mayor asked if he could be listed there. We had a whole conversation. I wish it was live streamed and recorded. That is unnecessary and just adds confusion and should not be on the agenda.
So I can remove it on the minutes, on these minutes. The agenda may mention that because I don't build the agendas.
Yeah.
But whoever's building the agendas can make that decision. So I'm happy to remove them. I just oftentimes use the agenda as my base, so
Yep.
is that agreed upon change?
So we're talking about on the minutes or talking about on this agenda?
We're talking about the agenda. Yeah.
Correct, today's agenda.
So it says also in attendance, and what we had talked about in the special meeting when we talked about the rules of council, we had gotten clarification from the solicitor when the mayor asked if he could be listed on there. That actually just adds confusion, and that this section, also in attendance, should not be on the agenda. It's more than it is.
Okay, so is that a motion or is that discussion?
This is a discussion where I would make a
Discussion that we're
motion.
not approving the minutes with that, with the
Okay,
agenda
alright.
with that line.
Okay,
I'm making a big X and now we're moving it.
There you go. Now we have to do it.
Okay.
so I can remove, I can remove that from what's gonna be the minutes. The
Yes.
agenda is essentially whatever you want it to be. So you want that line gone, it's gone. And it's going to be reflected in the minutes, is that fair?
It's gonna be gone, correct.
I mean, it is already gone.
Quick fingers.
That's what I do. Okay. So
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
is that a new motion or that
She
was,
has to put forth a new motion. and she-
okay, there we go. That's why I'm asking. Okay,
And I second it. So it's as amended, as amended.
I think we should have like 5 more minutes. This is fun.
All right, all those in
good job,
favor?
Art.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we will have to approve these minutes from last time. Did everybody have a chance to look through it? Does anybody have any comments? So I'll put forth the motion to approve the minutes from our February 5th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Oh,
Motion?
I have discussion, yes, please.
Go ahead.
In the finance committee minutes, there was on the part where we talk about the RFP for the solicitor and the avenues where it was gonna be posted. There was an ask that is posted elsewhere, not just the website and the Inquirer. And what we specifically asked is that the administrator look for other avenues to post that, including the Cincinnati Bar, and then ask them to research job boards for that to be posted more broadly.
Do you want to send that to me?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And then the other one is that there was something about the credit card statements, and I wanted to clarify, Mr. Fisher asked for the credit card statements for the last 6 months to review those in this committee.
I have spoken to them. I've been in the whole.
Yes, and I just wanted that clarified on the minutes.
So if you can just send me those few,
You'll get my whole thing.
that'd be great.
That was towards the end.
Correct. I think second to last bullet.
Okay.
That's my.
Are we up to date, Mr. Chef?
So was there an all in favor on that already?
No, now we're gonna do all in favor.
Okay, so
No, a new motion.
So being that there are edits that Ms. Kreimer is going to send me separately, either you could dictate it to me orally and you can vote on it now, and then we can have you sign it later, or I can make those additions, then you can approve this week's minutes or this month's minutes and last month's minutes in the following meeting. I leave that to you how you want to proceed.
We'll approve it next.
Okay.
We'll approve it in the next meeting and get the exact language from her email. Okay, so if that's the case, we are not gonna approve this. Next, we would have our fiscal officer go through the year end of 2023, please.
So if I may, I will go over the December 2023 packet first. I think that makes the most sense because that pretty much sums up the entire 2023. There are a few additions from the HINCO report that was submitted to the state, and then we can go over the January 24, if that's agreeable to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, so hold on one second here. Okay. So for the month of December fiscal year 23, the village had a combined bank balance of $2,494,461.72. Of this amount, $270,534.94 can be found in the village's primary checking account, and $610,810.74 can be found in the village's high interest savings account. The remaining balance resides in other village dedicated funds. Mind you, of that entire combined bank balance, that does include the STAR fund, if you were wondering. Just as for context, the trends that I see are that monthly expenses are generally in the realm of $160,000 to $250,000. So a bank balance of 270 is about a minimum of where I want to keep us. I don't like keeping it much lower than that, in case we have a $45,000 check that goes in one day and then another, $100,000 check the next day, or even sometimes the same day. Again, I don't get to choose when they cash it. I do know when we write them, and I want to make sure that we keep our bank balance as positive. We're not having any issues there, but of course that we're maximizing interest receipts in the savings account. If we have major amounts of outstanding checks, which generally we do not, so then you'll see that the bank balance is significantly higher than 270. But again, that's fairly rare. The village generated $93,638.08 in general fund income tax receipts. Again, that's a record month for a record year. RETA collections were significantly higher than December of the previous year. For the year, the village has collected $1,103,607.50 in general fund income tax receipts, which surpassed the 2022 collections by 16.12%. Now, you might be thinking, well, that might be an outlier. That might be unusual. We're seeing this year over year. It's like a 10% increase or more every year since joining RETA. It's just unbelievable what they have brought. Now, mind you, it's not just RETA, right? It's also other economic factors that are going into that. I decline to comment on any of those possibilities, what might be going on in the economy and people's salaries and the cost of living increase and all those kinds of things. I have no idea how that affects it, beyond that RETA is very good at their job and they're tied in with the IRS. And interestingly enough, there's very little that a small municipality like us could do to compete with them. And for the $30,000 we pay them annually, it's just, this was a major positive decision that happened, I think, about 5-6 years ago that the village went to RETA. And we're just continually seeing, continually seeing fruits. It could be 2017 or 18. Might be a little bit longer than that at this point.
Yeah, I remember like 14 or 15.
I don't remember. But anyway, way before I was ever here. So the village received the remainder of all outstanding real estate taxes in October, so there's no update on that. Again, all of these paragraphs are just where was it last month or where was it last year. The village received $160,911.77 in general fund receipts. That number is $73,963.81 more than December fiscal year 22. Again, that increase is attributed to RETA collections and grant money from Hamilton County for Volunteer Park, which was, I think, $25,000. Again, that was a $35,000 grant. We have not received the rest of that. That's the Volunteer Park grant that we've discussed previously. The DEA program for December received $13,188.33, which brought the annual total to $128,726.77. That's a little bit below average on a year that was not COVID when all the courts were shut down. I had mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think only to one or two people before anyone really arrived. This is after a year where we made over $200,000. I think it was in 22. We made over $200,000. Obviously that program is going to ebb and flow. We want to see more, but it ended the year at 128. That's where we were at. The Star Fund earned $7,412.34, totaling at $69,458.67 for 2023 in interest. Again, that was just a major positive decision to move the money over. $610,810.74 of all, we mentioned this before, all funds reserve cash was placed in the Fifth Third Savings Account and earned $3,274.46, totaling $14,658.69 for 2023. So again, if you look at the chart next to you, total interest for the year, this was a new line item that didn't exist until I think we started doing this a couple months after I started here. We're at $84,000 for the year. Pretty fantastic. Top 5 pays for the month were Central Land Title Agency. That was for the purchase of the car wash, which is no longer. Payroll, Adlita Construction, DPS, and JMA Consultants, Inc. Total village general fund appropriation spent for the month was in the amount of $349,539.13. Again, that is $128,193.52 more than December fiscal year 22, due to the purchase of the car wash was about $148. Otherwise, expenses were close to on par. Village had 11 outstanding payments that total $40,446.25. Village administration will continue to monitor appropriation and spend and make any adjustments deemed necessary. Any questions?
Can you direct me to where you were talking about the DEA fund? And
Yes.
I lost where you were.
So that was in the
I don't see it on page 12 where the summary is. So I'm trying to make sure I follow where you were.
Right here, did you see notice?
I was looking for your number, 128, right?
128,726.77.
There.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And can you clarify for me the DEA program a little?
Yeah. So we again, this is
pay the salary for a DEA officer. Is that
so
correct?
So the village pays up front the salary and benefits of a DEA officer who works. And again, I really should defer to the chief for this, if that's okay. I'm realizing I really should not be speaking.
Yeah, we have an employee, he's a Village of Gulf Manor police officer, that's assigned to this task force. So we pay him, he's very productive. When they thought that he might be taken off the team, they came out and met with us in person, please don't take him off the team, he's too valuable. A lot of agencies will send people to task forces, it's normally a year at a time, or maybe 2 years at a time. He's too valuable to the safety of this whole region, and I'll tout that. The cases he's worked with these guys. So we pretty much leave him there. It would be a waste to have him do something else. So we send him there, and then whatever forfeitures occur throughout the federal court, because we have a person assigned to this task force, we get a percentage of whatever is forfeited.
Okay. So it's not a DEA agent, it's one of our officers on the task force?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I actually did not know that, so
And
I
is it-
appreciate that clarification.
And it was an officer that was already here and we assigned to that task force, or we hired somebody to just
We-
do it specifically?
We hired him when we were hiring a lot of people.
Okay, and then he got assigned later to that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
He had that background, so we were like, we need to take advantage of this expertise. And
Okay.
he's helped us here with drug involved cases, and then the access he has to other facets of law enforcement. So if we have, we've used assets to help other investigations involving computers and phones and things like that, because we have access to expertise, people that he associates with.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, so that is the end of the 2023 December report. Are there questions on that before we move to the year-end statement?
Quick question here.
Sure.
So we don't have to take a deeper dive into them now, but I am curious if I do have questions about either payments that are pending or anything like that. I think all of it highlighted are payments, either cleared or pending.
Yeah.
Would I be able to like come to you ahead of time and just get like a copy of that purchase order or
Yeah.
whatever that looks like?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Just to have an understanding of what we're spending and where.
I think one clarification I had, and I apologize if you put this in the definitions and I just missed it. When you say warrant on,
It's checks.
and when it says to residents, why?
Those are receipts. So if you go to page 10 out of
Yeah.
44, there are residents who pay for code, they pay for, what's it called, permits for
Oh, okay.
zoning permits.
Gotcha.
There are residents who pay to rent the hall. There are residents to pay
Perfect,
for
okay.
anything. So,
Any money from a resident, is okay.
right. So the way that things used to be done around here were people's names were actually in these documents. And it was not so simple because we report this to the Ohio checkbook. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that online.
Yeah, you're
but-
reporting each individual.
Right, so that was something that they said as a best practice should not be in any of these reports. Most of those names were actually removed before I got here, but there were certain times, especially in older data, when I started, that was one of the things that I did was I brought us up to date on the Ohio checkbook, and they said, yeah, you want to remove all of those names. So that's why it always says residents.
Perfect, that makes total sense. That was not clear to me.
There was a question from Ms. Cheney about the Amberley Village payment that we received of $25,879.99. That was part of the Adlita contract that we have
That's what I
for
thought.
North Weehee.
Thank you.
So there was a significant portion of, significant. It's about half a block, but it was significant enough that Amberley felt that it would be a good idea for them to get on board with us in our project. So the village was repaving Weehee anyway. Amberley chose to partner with us, and we paid for that project, and then Amberley paid us their portion, which was determined by the engineer, our engineer, ahead of time with their cooperation. I will point out that the same cooperation was a lot harder to achieve with some other neighbors to the south, and those portions of Weehee remain unpaved and not updated. That I think it's worth noting for future road projects that if there are connections with our southern neighbor, the city of Cincinnati, that it would be great if we could get them on board with us to, if we're doing a project like that, or if they're repaving Langdon Farms again, to maybe do that part of the southern part of what's not our village.
Yeah, because that's just gonna be a straight line all the way across all of those streets.
It makes the most sense for us to do it, and it makes the most sense for them to pay for it, not us.
Yeah.
So, but again, we don't get to control them. Just again, pointing out that we have a very long-standing and good relationship with our neighbors to the north in Amberley.
Cool.
Any other questions on the December financial packet? Okay, so we'll move on to the Hinkle report. That's the notes to financial statement 23 final draft, which was shared with you. So you'll notice that our budget was significantly up. For the general fund was $2,478,172.94. Cash disbursements from the general fund was slightly over that, $2,508,372.81. That shows an excess of receipts, or excuse me, of under disbursements of $30,199.87. That was reduced by the sale of two 218, the Durango. So that brings that deficit down to 8,199.87. Now, the reason why there's about 3,000 of that, which only showed up this year, and you'll notice a fund balance adjustment as directed by the audit of 2,998.32. Those were outstanding POs that had been sitting in the outstanding payments page of the financial packet since before I was a council member. And again, an initiative that I took was we should not have outstanding payments from 2018 on our 2023 financial packets.
They were sitting in accounts payable or receivable?
Payable. So there were payments that were issued that were issued in error, and they had never been dealt with because it was from previous fiscal years. It's
Yeah.
very messy to do that.
Nobody told you that.
So it was sitting there and no one was doing anything about it. So I reached out to the UAN hotline in Columbus, and they helped me do that. Now, mind you, that makes my job at the end of the year a heck of a lot more difficult. If you recall, Charlotte, I came up to you and showed you all those zeros at the bottom. That was after I had determined how all of those fund balance transfers had affected the bottom line and the end result adjusted cash balance. So again, our adjusted cash balance would have been 1,017,411.98, but we were running on 1,014,413, and the deficit thereof, so to speak, was 5,000, just over $5,000. So pretty good for the year. Being that our property taxes were lower than expected last year, they were lower, but the income taxes were so much higher than expected that any projected deficit in spending was made up significantly. It was exactly offset, and in a great way. I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say there. I think that's it for now. Again, there is a page for fiduciary funds. That's on page 3. That's something that we have to report, but it's not our money. We have to account in our accounting system for the mayor's court, but it's money that goes into mayor's court, is in their software called Baldwin, which then they make payments to either the county, the state, or to the village. And then the village takes those checks and puts them into 5 or 6 different funds. I think the computer fund gets some, and like it's different. It gets divided throughout the village. Again, it's not a huge sum of money over the year. Anyone who thinks that the police departments run on tickets has never looked at one of these before, because this is just not all that much money. But again, this is the mayor's court in and mayor's court out, and then unclaimed monies. So this is not really kept as part of our major financial reporting. Everything else is definitions and a summary of significant accounting policies. So if you have any questions about how fund accounting works or how the village specifically treats different accounts, Charlotte, I know you had some questions about setting things up for Juneteenth. That'll be a separate conversation, obviously, but much of that is really in the special revenue funds. So just for everyone's reference, the special revenue funds is kind of where a lot of those things live. That's where the road fund lives. That's where, and you can see, it's brought down here, the street fund, the permissive motor vehicle license tax fund, fire levy, police levy, street levy. Again, those are 2 different things. One's state funded, which ends up covering a lot of the maintenance, and the other one is actually the physical construction of the roads. And then the federal law enforcement, the coronavirus relief fund. There are some funds that are inactive for all intents and purposes, and those are not brought down on this. Again, I did inherit a significant amount of this. I've made updates to this.
Yeah.
This is past audit in previous iterations. I've only added to it. I haven't subtracted to it. And I believe what I did was correct within the purview of the position. But again, if you have questions, there are things that you want more information on. This is going to give you the best idea kind of how our accounting policies work.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Eric, on page 7. can I
Yeah.
ask questions?
Yeah, I'm getting there. On budgetary activities, is that where you're at?
Yeah, I'll pause.
No problem. So on budgetary activity, you have the budgeted receipts and actual receipts are 2 different columns, and there's a variance there. So the variance is going to be whenever we think we're going to we're going to get a certain amount of money from the county, or we think we're going to get a certain amount of money from Rita. So that's our budget. That's what we plan for. Now, Rita has a record year, so that's going to be a variance. And that's most of this $82,000 variance. Now you'll notice that we had a 16% increase from previous years, and I never over project on income taxes. I generally under project. But again, that's accounted for by the fact that the county also reduced the general fund receipts in the budget. So again, the actual receipts, that's that $2,500,173. It rounds off the numbers. I don't round, but this presentation does, and it's not up to me. I don't like that, but it's like I said. But the budgeted receipts were slightly under that. That's what we were expecting. Again, okay, so we'll get there. Special revenue, again, the same thing. The variance there is mostly the road projects that we did this year. I think we did 3 different road projects this year, which is like a record. We did Canterbury Englewood, we did Elbrook, and we did Weehee all in 1 year. I think most of those were grant funds, but I think it was Weehee we paid outright. We didn't take a loan out for Weehee, and that's why this was a significant dip. I think we didn't qualify for that. Can't remember exactly what that.
The variance of $565,000, that is
basically Weehee. That's only half of Weehee.
We thought we were going to get a grant and we didn't.
No, that's
this is on the income side.
No, this is well, yes, this is on the income side. I'm sorry, you're correct. The actual receipts was significantly less. So why did we budget so high? I apologize. You're correct. You caught that. Why was our receipts so much higher? I'm not sure. That's a good question. I can find that out.
Okay.
Typically, things with the road fund are so, I don't want to say volatile, but that might be that's what that was, because in previous years that's what we received. That would make sense. It makes sense what you're saying, but I don't want to say yes without like confirming.
No, that's okay. I appreciate that. Because if you look at the receipts, the expenditures, you're about 505,000 over.
Yeah.
On the special revenue. So I could.
You could tie the two basically.
But also I can't, because
that would really make a much bigger difference.
Right, because you said you were going to spend $343,485,000, and you only spent like just under $3,000. So I'm like, there's got to be. I'm sure there's a story that connects the two.
Correct. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I remember what that was. I'm sorry. That happened so early in the year, so we didn't know that we were going to get the money from Weehee, and it never came to us. There was a significant amount of Weehee that got paid directly to the vendor that we never actually saw that money, and that was all grant money that we were not planning
So
on.
we put it on the receipts because we thought it was coming to us, and then it didn't even pass through.
But it paid them directly.
Right.
That's exactly what happened. I'm sorry, that
So
happened so early in the
budgeted
year.
expenses are also.
Yes.
Okay.
So just make sure I am understanding this. So
Yes.
for that, like 3.4 million for special revenue, that
Yes.
was what was appropriated at the beginning of the year. We actually only spent.
That was expenses, that's not revenue.
Got it, okay.
So this, if you go up to the first page, or the next page up, so this number was a grant that they thought they were gonna get from Weehee, and it was paid directly.
Following.
And then that's why a similar number is different in the expense side.
Correct. And again, the special revenue is not just the road, like that's everything except for the general fund. So that's the whole kit and caboodle. But yeah, that's my recollection of that. Again, I may be a little bit fuzzy on those details because that happened very early in the year. And there was a big celebration when that did happen, but I think it was sort of came through. It was like a $472,000 grant that went towards that, and it just went straight to the vendor.
Cool.
Yeah, so that is, okay, so that was, right, that was budgetary activity, that was actual receipts, and then the next was expenditures. Again, so a general practice, which I noticed, and something that, again, there's different schools of thought, over appropriate and then always come in under, or appropriate exactly what you think you're gonna need, and then if you need to spend more, come back and fix it. So I think the old kind of system was over appropriate, and then, always come in under, which generally is what happened. And the only time you ever saw appropriation changes was when it was on special revenue funds that required the revenue streams were just much smaller, and therefore they were much more sensitive to changes. My general practice has been to try and keep the actual appropriation authority as low as possible. And then, of course, working with our largest department, the police department, but also service and the administration to keep those expenses as low as possible. Big variances like 196, those are generally speaking like bigger projects that we thought were going to happen that didn't happen, or payments that we expected, for instance, to Elbrook or to any of the big road projects. If we didn't actually make the payments in 23, but we know those payments are coming, that's where a lot of that's going to come from. I mean, that's going to be more your special revenues. Again, that's that first one that we were speaking about. But the general fund here, why was that? Oh, so there was another grant that we never actually received the money from Hamilton County, but we had appropriated for the demolition and purchase of more property, which again, the purchase happened, but the demo didn't happen until now 24. So that's being billed in 24. And that demo we thought was going to be about 200,000. It ended up being about 130. So a significant reduction, but again, that's going to be that major variance there. Deposits and investments. So I've spoken about the deposits. I don't feel like we need to go into that too much. Again, more of a description on property taxes and income taxes. Everybody knows Gulf Manor has a 1.7% income tax, and Rita has. So as of July 1st, 2018, the village entered into the agreement with Rita. I knew I had it here somewhere. So that's the village has been with Rita since 2018. Before that, the village did manage their own income taxes. Risk management, we work, again, this is all like much more nitty gritty stuff that's pretty standard with every municipality. Risk management, we are on the Ohio plan. Health insurance, self-insured is through the Center for Local Government. That has like 40 local governments in Southwestern Ohio. I think that I would be surprised if it wasn't the biggest one, but I haven't done research on that one. It's something that I inherited. Defined benefits, OPERS, that's by ORC. We have to follow that. Ohio Police and Fire, same thing. It's just a different percentage. And then we can move on to debt. Are there any questions up until now before I move on to the year end? The more year end. Okay, I know you had a question. I realized like maybe I should slow down and like break this up a little bit.
No, I asked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anyone else? Okay, it's boring, but it's important. So outstanding debt as of December 31st, 2023. Again, you'll notice most of it is road projects. These are all 0% loans over 20 years, which is approximately the useful life of the road. We certainly hope we're going to get more than 20 years out of them. But these are, every time we can get one of these, because these funds do run out, we want to take advantage of them. And this is independent of like the sort of money which is being used for the intersections, or the skip money which is used for, I think they're talking about Hamel. So those are not, I mean, we get certain grants, and then we get other loans which come up. And a lot of times the loans will only, the grants will only cover like 50%, and then their expectation is that you're going to take the other half in loans. Again, when my money's making 5% on interest and I can get a 0% loan for 20 years, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to take that loan. So that's why we've been, I mean, not why, but that's why I recommend to continue paying for roads in the way that we have been. Again, with a following with the engineers' recommendations of which roads to focus on. I know that we're coming towards the end of a cycle, and there will be a few more roads looked at, but I know Ridge Acres is on there, and Hamel is one that we've already spoken about. I think Mayflower maybe Brewing. But again, you're going to see this list get bigger as those loans become available.
That's also assuming, though, that interest rates stay where they are. We already know the Fed is looking at lowering rates in the next couple of quarters. So over a 20-year loan, I'm not sure we'll stay with the 5%.
It's true, but 0% is 0%.
Yeah.
You know, that beats inflation any day.
Well, I'm just saying we can't say, oh, we're always going to have 5% to outbeat.
Yeah, no, I'm not indicating that at all. I'm just saying in terms of, you know, what's a better use of village funds is to keep them sitting in our bank account, you know, earning even 2% or 3%
Oh, sure.
when we have a 0% loan, or do we pay it outright and then we're just out on that money? Especially when you're talking about, in this case, $1 million.
Oh, for sure.
Right, so that would be, so again, you see Stover, Vera, Albrook, Canterbury, Englewood. Those are the major projects that have been completed. The Ford F-150 lease, this was something which I think, that's the 2021, that's a service purchase, and that's almost finished. The next vehicle that would potentially show up on that list was discussed at a certain point about getting a new dump truck to replace the existing 12-year-old dump truck, which, again, going by American Public Works Association recommendations, is 12 years of useful life, and then to sell it, use those proceeds towards a new vehicle, reduce the debt, or not, depending on the interest rate we get, but these days probably the interest rates can be higher. And then the 2022 F-250, that's the administrative vehicle, which was paid for out of the drug fund. So we currently have no vehicle leases for the police department at December 31st, 2023, out of the general fund. We have no payments on vehicles, on police vehicles right now,
Wait,
out of the general fund.
oh,
The
What we
one
talked
which
about,
is
yeah.
here is that's the one that was paid for out of the drug fund. Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
So OPWC, so this is just a description of all the OPWC loans. I don't need to get into that. Again, all of these leases were retired leases. So again, by the end of the year, those are gone. So you see this at the end of 23. That should confirm. It looks like I may have left one off the list.
Very sorry.
No, I left it off the list. I have to edit
Eric's
that.
like,
Oh, that's so annoying. It's so annoying.
You're good. This is-
Okay, whatever. Anyway, this spreadsheet is what's actually up to date. There was one that I forgot that we never discussed because we bought it so separately. There was the DEA vehicle, which was paid for out of the DEA program. That's the 2022 Frontier. That is still outstanding debt, which is not in the narrative above. So that needs to be. I'm sorry. That needs to be added. Okay, but basically that was a Nissan Frontier, which the village had leased, and at the end of 2 years, the village bought it off the
Yeah,
lease.
yeah.
And we're paying that out slowly. That has a much lower interest rate. That is not above. And again, I apologize for missing that. I will add that. The rest of these vehicles, I believe, are on there.
Well, I see 4 vehicles for
There is
2022 F-150, 2022 F-250, and
because it's retired, meaning anything in the 23 column is gone. So
Yeah.
that's the Ram and the Jeep. So there's an F-150. There's 2 F-150s.
yeah, 250 and the
What's that?
Frontier.
Oh, that's another police. Okay, I'm sorry. So there's one more there. That's right. There's one more payment on that police vehicle. So there's 2 vehicles left off there. Okay, that was an oversight. You're correct. I will fix that. Vehicles. Earlier notes. So it's the Frontier and. Okay, I knew it was in here. I just didn't see it above. Okay. So that gives you an idea of all the outstanding debt. And again, I have a spreadsheet which has all of these on here. So this is the correct numbers. It's just, again, I left it off on that section above, which I'm wondering if that even is supposed to have vehicles. That might just be for larger debts, but I'll fix it. Okay, contingent liabilities, I think we're good. Fund balances, we've spoken about in COVID-19. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. There is, again, you should, for reference, those vehicles under debt. Those are the actual car debts that we have. But otherwise, that is it.
When do we make that final payment on the 2020 150?
It's already happened.
Oh, it's already.
That's because
Great.
a lot of these things, the payment is at the beginning of the year.
Sure.
And so I just,
Yeah.
when I'm putting this together, I'm also looking, I looked at where it was now. That's probably why I left it off. But when I go through the whole spreadsheet, I'm adding it on over here. But I don't know why I left off the Frontier. here, right, because that was a weird one. Any other questions about year end?
Nope.
Okay,
Why did you leave out one car?
I left out two cars.
Two cars.
I left out two cars above, so I have to fix those.
I don't
You
know what
pocket
series
those
car
cars.
you're talking.
See, that's why they make you present this stuff.
Does anybody look at what he's driving?
2011 Prius.
You mean it's not?
Don't laugh.
It's not.
It's not funny.
Ford Focus? You're not driving the Avenue
Oh,
car?
man. Yeah, no. I like my Prius. Okay, so that is the end of that year end. I can go through quickly the current month. I know we're probably all very warm, so I will try and go through January fairly quickly unless there are any specific questions on year end, other than two vehicles which were left off of one section. Okay, I will take your silence as indication to move on. So for the month of January fiscal year 24, the village had a combined bank balance of $2,572,380.73. Of this amount, $169,292.28 can be found in the village's primary checking account. At $453,611.59 are in the high interest savings account. Again, every month you're going to notice that gets lower and lower. February is even lower because we haven't received the county real estate money yet. Village generated.
When does that come again?
It's supposed to come like any day. Typically comes in March. So, village generated $83,157.54 in income tax receipts. Again, this is surpassing January of the previous year by over 20%. Yet again, Rita it's not perfect. There are definitely months where Rita has a lull, and you'll see that with February, but it's a significant increase there. Village has not received the first biennial disbursement of real estate taxes from the county. Village received $134,243.90 in general fund receipts. That number is $23,024.69 more than January fiscal year 23. Again, Rita. The DEA program received nothing in January. The STAR Fund earned $7,397.40. $453,611.59 of all funds reserve cash is continuing to grow in the Fifth Third Savings Account. Again, smaller returns on the interest because there's a lot less money in there, but still $2,300.85. Top five payees for the month were payroll, DPS, Ohio Police and Fire, Rumpke Container, Ohio Treasurer of State for OPWC loans, which is a new one, but that's because we're paying off now, I believe, 3 loans. The 4th loan, Elbrook, has not hit yet. We're supposed to start paying for that shortly after the construction finishes. I guess they didn't get around to charging us for this January, so July. That's when we'll see it. It's either January or July. So
Okay.
I don't know why we didn't get an invoice, but we don't even have an amortization schedule for it yet. So that's up to them. I'm not asking any questions. Total village general fund appropriation spent for the month was the amount of $348,192. This is $122,222.79 more than January of fiscal year 23. This is really due to advancing $137,500 to the fire levy from the general fund until levy funds arrive from the county. So you'll see that is it's called a fund advance transfer, where the fire levy did not have enough money to pay the bills, but the general fund does. So instead of taking money from the general fund and actually putting it in the fire levy, we loan the fire levy, and then once we get the money back, we will get that back. Now, this will probably become standard operating procedure every year because we're always going to start the year short.
Mm-hmm.
Our fire levy is only $469,000 or $475,000, and our fire service costs us about $550,000. So this is going to be every year. It's going to happen like this, and eventually, it's going to be more than that. So again, eventually, we're going to have to actually supplement. But for now, because we continue to receive money from Little Miami of and this year was $109,000. So that difference is made up and then some. That'll be for this year, next year, and the following year, and then we lose those payments fall off.
So in 2026 is when we won't receive any more money from the Little Miami, and we will have to permanently supplement this deficit.
No, 26 is our last payment.
So 27.
Correct.
Okay. And the difference is roughly.
469 to 550, so $81,000.
Okay.
Is that right? $71,000?
Sure. That's 100 in my head.
And the reason why it's 100 is it goes up to the amount we have to pay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, so that's true, it will continue to be,
It keeps
it'll,
on rising.
meaning year 4, year 5, there's supposed to be a 3% increase.
Okay.
And is
But
that
again, then we
why-
could renegotiate, or we could see how else we do.
Yeah, is that why we are putting a fire levy on the ballot for the fall?
I don't believe
No,
it's putting a
that's
fire
a-
levy on the
that's
ball.
that's
It's the renewal for the general fund.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, renewal for the general fund is the
Okay.
7 mil levy.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the end of the fiscal year 24, that's fiscal month January 24 report. I feel like there's a few pieces in there that I wanted to speak about more, but we're all tired and it's late. So if
Can
you
I
have
ask
specific
one
questions,
quick-
please.
What was the $418 at Land's End? That's all.
That was probably the administration typically pays for all of the employees to have different gifts at the end of the year for like jackets and like branded wear.
Oh.
Specific,
Okay.
yeah, so like you'll notice all of the employees have like Golf Manor branded something, I don't know why he chose Land's End, but that's what,
Okay.
What's
That's
about
the-
council?
I'm sorry,
What's about us?
For employees,
I'm game. I never got one when I was on council.
we're all good. I just thought that was a weird chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody have more questions?
I have a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's not necessarily a question about this packet per se, it's just a general question to follow from our last meeting. I think last time you presented to us the whole issue of essentially our property taxes, receiving a lot.
Yeah, so,
I was gonna
yeah.
say you looked into it.
So I did look into it. I hesitate to present on it because the last time I looked into it, it looked like there was gonna be a major shortfall. If you look at the county's website right now, it looks like there's gonna be an increase. So I don't understand, meaning the source material that they send me, this is what you need to base your budget on, is significantly lower than what we've done in the past. But then I asked for previous years, I said, okay, so this is 23, what about 22, which I had nothing to do with, and that number was also significantly lower. So that told me that I don't have all the information with that projection, which I don't know why I don't even know what that projection means still, but on the county website, you can go to the hamiltoncountyauditor.org. It's like the second or third thing up there next to the letter that says, please talk to your legislation. We're not going to change your taxes.
Yeah.
But it says that Gulf Manor is supposed to receive like $130,000 more than last year.
That's great news.
So, but again, I hesitate to report that as like, this is the update because I don't know that for sure, and I have not been able to confirm.
So I'll just
Just
ask you to
detail.
continue your general due diligence and let us know when you know.
Absolutely, I 100%.
Does that mean the polygraph changed?
Um,
We
so
were-
I wasn't sure. Sharon, you mentioned that it looked like the pie graph had changed on the county
It did.
website. I can't explain that.
Well, I went ahead because I'm protesting my taxes, so I did a whole kind of thing on Vera Avenue and all the two families. And then I also looked at Rose for the pie chart. I looked at Roselawn, I picked streets in Cincinnati, Amberley, Pleasant Ridge. I'm probably missing somebody, but I had like 5 or 6. And Gulf Manor is paying more to the district than anybody, to Cincinnati schools, and less here.
In percentage.
Other ones, yeah, some have gone down, some have gone up. It's very interesting when you look at it that way.
Right, so that's what we were asked last time about Cincinnati.
Yeah, so I'm going to attach that to my stuff when I send it in. I want an answer on that.
You're suing them through a lawyer?
No.
Not that far?
It's that,
You're doing an appeal?
yeah, I'm appealing my
Like a hearing?
taxes.
Yeah.
Because they're way high.
Sharon, you said we pay more to outside of Cincinnati than here,
Yes.
like somebody in
Oh.
Roselawn pays less than
Yes.
Cincinnati schools.
We are now paying more to the city of Cincinnati School District, and less is coming here to us this year,
Percentage-wise.
percentage-wise, yes.
Well, and they've updated it, because no, they haven't. So last year, we paid 45.8% to the school district and 36.8 came to the village. And this year, if you look at the county's website, 52% goes to the school district and 30.6% comes to the village.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to understand why there's
45
difference.
Exactly.
A lot already.
So $1 out of $3 comes back to where you live, if you live here.
One every,
Yeah,
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah, basically, yeah, we pay a lot of money to the school district.
pay a lot of money to everybody else.
Yeah, so again, I have not been able to get more clarity on that. It's not,
I'll let you know if I get any.
yeah, anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
it's-
go fight for all of us, we'll join in.
Because that's the other thing, the county, I don't know if the county made the calculation or if they're just following the prescriptions that they're getting from the state, because this is just,
It doesn't make sense.
it's just unclear.
I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So under fund status, we've got the rec commission 2071 that has $650.96.
Can I ask you for a page?
This page is my notebook that's handwritten. I'm just kidding. It is page 8.
Okay,
Okay, so that $632, is that part of the 2,000 that's been appropriated for rec commission, or that is in addition to? How do those numbers relate?
yeah, so fund balance is how much money was left in that account.
Yeah.
January 1st, in this case, January 31st. Appropriations doesn't put money into the account. The
Okay.
account has to be funded. So the way that this account would be funded would be either donations, right? And that money goes in, and then appropriation says the village of Gulf Manor is allowed to spend that money.
Got it.
Right? Or it would have to be coming from the general fund. The general fund has to have $2,000 that we're transferring out of the general fund and putting it specifically into the Recreation Commission fund. Now, that is generally not done unless there's a necessity, because when you go from a more general fund to a more specific fund, then those funds cannot go back. It's a one-way street, not a two-way street. But meaning the money for the recreation fund is only leftover funds from last year. That would either have to be transferred in by appropriation from the general fund, or has to be raised separately. But the spending authority is, I think we said, about $2,000 for the year.
Unless your funds are transferred as needed.
Correct.
We're donating.
And then same page, Fund 2151, the Coronavirus Relief Fund.
Yeah.
We're showing that 204,000.
$857.49. Yes.
I know that I had asked previously about, I think there's 160,000 that's earmarked.
160,000 that's appropriated.
Yeah.
There were encumbered balances. There was money that was, it's an accounting technicality that if the year ends with an open PO and then you close that PO, the money remains encumbered and you can't spend it.
Mhm.
So that was at the end of 23. And I calculated that there would be 160,000 available. And then once that PO closed, all that money became available for appropriation, but a council has to appropriate the rest of that in order for it to happen.
Okay. Okay,
So yes, meaning the amount of money available is 204,857.49, but council cannot spend that without passing legislation to accept those appropriation changes. But council can spend that 160, whatever it is in there.
okay. And do we have that earmarked for something already?
I can't speak to that. That's the administrator is much more familiar with that. I know that there are specific, there are specific restrictions what that money can be used for. I know that in the past it had been used for playground equipment. I know that some of it had been used for the shade sales.
What fund is it in? I'm sorry.
That's the
I didn't catch
coronavirus, the
Oh.
coronavirus, the ARPA
There
money.
are certain
Yeah,
things,
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
ARPA money.
Playground was one of them.
So that was one stage of ARPA, and then the shade sales was another stage of ARPA. There's been different iterations, but like what we have now is only one source of funding.
Okay.
So
Plus, we gave money to employees.
that was the
Another
first stage. It was
That was
only
the
allowed.
first stage.
Yeah, that was the first stage. It was only allowed
Yeah.
for
Who
that.
worked
I
with
guess
COVID.
I maybe pass the message along, that I would still like to have a rundown of what our plan is for that 160. And because I know that I think we have until the end of the year that we need to spend it.
I
or
believe
do
so.
something with it,
I believe
put a
so.
plan in place, something like that, okay,
Right.
yeah, okay. And I can also follow up on my emails around too.
Yeah, in terms of like the breakdown of money that has been spent on that, I put together a report already back in 22. There is an updated report. I just haven't gotten around to sending it yet, but there is an updated report of what monies have been received and what monies have gone out, which includes, I believe, all of what Sharon was mentioning of money that was earmarked from ARPA that this can go towards employee. There was basically bonuses handed out to employees who were affected by it.
Gotcha.
But what we don't know is if there's plans for the 160.
That is my question.
It's been a while since
Ron
that's
had
been
it
discussed.
laid out, didn't he?
Yeah.
What
Well, there
he
was
wanted to do.
There was discussion about doing the LED lighting throughout the village,
That's it.
and then
That's
I
one.
found a way to do it without spending money.
Okay.
I mean, we spend the money, but we're spending it over time, and our bill didn't change,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
still left it. But we can still use that to pay off that balance, and then it would reduce our electric bill,
Okay.
significantly. But again, it's
Right,
being
we're
paid over
using
10
for
years at
something
this
else,
point.
but we have no idea what the plans are.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. That's
I think I would request perhaps from Ron in his absence, that we get an update on that, in the full council meeting on the 18th. And then my other question, we mentioned real estate in one of these reports somewhere. Do we have a listing of what our actual, what our real estate portfolio is, properties that we bought up?
we have a folder with all the deeds.
Okay.
I haven't put together anything for that, and the previous clerk certainly didn't. But if you want to come take a look at the folder, you can see what we own.
I would be very curious to see what is our land bank, so to speak, for Gulf Manor.
Other than North Weehee, I think we have 2 on Vera, 1 on Graceland. I don't think it's much more than that, but I don't remember.
Over.
Stover, we do have the port. I think transferred a lot more. I don't remember what the story is over there.
Yeah, it'd be helpful if we can ask the administrator to put together a list of all the properties that we currently own in the village.
Oh, I think.
Because I think that should go into the strategic plan if we're trying to do development on Weehee, whatever. It's helpful to know what do we actually own and why do we own those properties.
And what's the
Okay.
cost of maintenance that we're having to, do on them, if any?
Are our properties nuisance properties?
No, the service guys mow them.
I know, that's true.
Yeah. it's
I mean, they could be used
They're
for
on top.
other things, like rodents. Who knows, if they're not occupied, but that would be helpful to know.
I think all the properties do not have buildings on it.
What was the
Say that
question?
again?
All the properties we own do not have structures on it.
Correct. They're all vacant.
Any other questions?
Not for me.
All right, thank you, Eric. That brings us now to our favorite discussion for the night. Is, how are we gonna fund this new program for the police department? Boy. Okay, so if we all agree that it's time for an upgrade to the program, and we're all and we got recommendation from the executive committee to go ahead and figure out how to pay for this. Looking at the police department's budget that I spent some time doing, there is very little wiggle room. There's a little bit, we can pinch 2,000 here, maybe 1,000 there, 1,000 somewhere else, gives us 4,000, let's get us close to what we need. So the question is, what will be the correct approach for this? And for that, I think there's different options that we should discuss and look down. One is, like you just mentioned, I don't know what that 160, if we could tap into that amount, that's the question. If we could use our document for that. Option number 1 will be is that we advance the money to them, meaning we lend it to them right now, we approve it. We let them take the money out of the reserve with different open options of how we'll get it paid back, fully or half. Meaning we say we'll match the police department. If at the end of the year, we can pull from the DEA fund, if we could pull from somewhere else, then we don't mind forfeiting half of the amount that is needed. Right? Is that approach number 2? There's different options of how to do it. the question is, what does council really feel is the right approach? Just to make money appear, it's just out of their budget is really, really tight, and I don't see a place to get that much money. At the end of the year, if the DA fund does very well and the police department is very cautious of how much they spend, maybe they could come up with half the money or something like that. That's a discussion that I would love to have with the police department. We were gonna schedule a meeting for Thursday, but unfortunately I'm not able to make it, so eventually we'll have that discussion. I think the thing that makes the most sense is to advance the money, but let's work on a plan in a way that we could be able to get the money back into the reserve.
Yeah, so one thing I'll respond to that, because that's how I try to work, is if I can supplement for the PD, I do. But what we can't do, what the federal fund won't allow us to do, is take a regular expense off the table. So where we could get ourselves into trouble is if we're paying for the ongoing use of this, we would have to put that in our budget. And if we say, oh, but we'll pay for it for here, we can't take that money out of our budget and buy park equipment. Because it has to stay within the police department. That's just how the DEA fund works. But that's what I do, is if there's something like this comes up that we have this need that's outside of the budget process, we always try to do that. I don't like coming to you guys and asking you to wrestle around and draw from that reserve, because that reserve is very important. But I feel like that's what we built this for.
Coming at it from the other side, if you can't take money out of the police to go back into the fund, could we, when we appropriate new funds for the next year, reduce it by the same amount?
It's illegal.
It's illegal for us to allocate less funds to the police department.
Out of the DEA fund.
To take, so
I'm not saying out of the DA fund, I'm saying off the top.
The upkeep you're saying,
if it looks like we're cutting to offset, like this was purchased through the forfeited funds, and you make a cut out of the general fund, they look for that. They don't want that. I'm not expecting our budget to go up like giant leaps every year, but if all of a sudden we drop and we've spent it out of this other fund, they're gonna come down and audit us, and we can be forced to repay that. They're very strict on how it's used. That's my only hang up. But I do this with other things. If there's something I think we need, there's equipment upgrades I think we need, or body armor I think we need, to save general fund dollars, I don't put it in there. That's why our operations budget is so small, because I don't want to have it and then supplant it out of the federal fund to get us in trouble. So we keep our operations budget low, knowing that we have an opportunity to get some of these other extra things through this federal fund. I think our primary records management system that we use every day for every aspect of our agency would want to be a general fund thing, not a DEA thing, because you can't bank like Mr. Brittenell said last year. From the prior year, we received a lot more. It just depends on what kind of cases and what kind of things go through those courts.
correct, so there's two questions on the table. There's one is how we're gonna fund it for the future, I mean, how we're gonna pay for the upkeep of every year, and then now paying for the program. Right, those are two questions. So what you're saying is that the upkeep, we're gonna have to go ahead and we can't take that from the DDA.
No, but what we did do is in years past, through mayor's court, when citation is paid, there's funds set up, there's a computer fund set up.
Correct.
That funds go into that, so we would just have to appropriate that, and make sure that those computer funds are used for computers that operate the mayor's court system. Another thing I didn't touch on is, the Baldwin system that Eric referenced, that Denise uses, interfaces directly with Sundance as well. So, there's an efficiency gain through that as well. So we're not doing everything 2 and 3 times.
No, we agree with the program.
Yeah, no, I was reminded of that. But this is why we created the mayor's court fund, and the computer fund, is for things like this.
So the computer fund now, I see it hasn't been used, it's only been used 10%, already 60% into the year. So that'll be one place where we could pinch a little bit out of, but would that be the fund that we could use for the, going forward to fund it? for the
That would be
year
my
2 or
goal.
3?
Yeah, that would be my goal to put that into there.
But Chief Campbell, you mentioned to me after I spoke with you earlier, David, Chief Campbell, you mentioned that there are certain expenses and there's kind of a spending freeze throughout the department right now, that there are certain necessary things that either have not been done or will be done towards the end of the year. So the percentages where things are
Yeah.
holding now don't indicate
Yeah.
actually where the balance is at.
Some of the things you talk about pinching is, we know we're gonna have expenses later in the year. An example I gave Mr. Pridnoff is our radios. Over the last several years, we've upgraded our radios from the older version that's getting phased out to what's accepted now. And last year, I think we got the last radio to replace all the old ones. So what we do is typically year end, because vendors know how government and the budgeting works. So towards the end of the year, last quarter usually, is when if they have stock available, they'll put together special pricing packages. So if I have anything left in my budget to get, backup batteries, our batteries periodically go out, antennas, things like that. So some of these items, it looks like we have plenty of room, we haven't used it yet. It's knowing that we're waiting for better prices after the summer to get certain things. So, and radios are pretty big expense, they're about $8,000.
What are you guys doing with the old radios?
They're gonna be paperweights, they're useless.
Could we sell them?
No.
You know, let us sell them?
No, because they're programmed in through Mobilecom for a lot of specific channels, and a lot of things you can go online and get. But there's disaster, like mutual aid channels and disaster channels and things like that they don't want a kid getting one of these at flea market playing with it.
That you can't get on just like police scanner apps?
You can't transmit it to them.
Here you could talk, there you can.
Yeah, these have serial numbers embedded, so, if I'm unable to speak and I'm clicking my radio, they know that radio belongs to me. We can't.
And I'm just coming up with just things. I know last month we toured the basement. There's a number of firearms down there we could potentially sell. There's a number of items down there that are just like lying around. Can we sell any of that?
I don't like to sell firearms.
We also put the money in the
I asked
budget.
that question before.
Well, but I mean,
I
we also
asked that
have-
question
We also
before.
have the testing equipment that we're not using anymore.
Yeah, so that was,
Your bikes.
there was equipment down there, fuming chambers. That was donated by a business here in the village to us. They built that for us. I don't know that we would turn around and sell it. It's kind of a modular thing that they do. They've done several things for us. It's a nice partnership they have. But we've sold things. So an example, the Jeep that I drive, that was purchased with federal funds. When we're done using that, we'll sell that. That money goes back into that federal fund so we can apply it to the next thing. When we sold 218, the last cruiser, that went back into the general fund. So we can do that when we can. We've sold furniture. We've taken some furniture apart and put it in here and had people from the county take pictures of it and list it and auction it off. So, believe me, if we could wring some pennies out of something, we try to. Just because we know there's not an endless well of money for us to do what we need to do. But,
Eric, if I'm looking at the 2024 appropriations from our website,
Yeah,
and I'm looking at the sheet that talks about the, I guess you have it labeled Exhibit 3.
okay,
It's the last sheet here.
yeah,
Help me understand this. So if I'm looking at this correctly, we've got the Federal Law Enforcement Trust, 2081.
yeah,
And you're saying by the end of this year, end of 2024, that's gonna be negative $20,000. Is that how I'm reading that correctly?
negative $20,000.
You got a minus inside, that's what I'm guessing.
no, there's no way to know that.
Yeah, you can't, well, no, that must be an old draft. Are you looking at the website currently?
I am looking at the one from the council packet and I believe.
But I'm saying, are you going on the website right now?
Yes.
So the website right now, did Ron explain to you what happened to the website?
He sent the email that I sent to everybody. That's all I got.
Okay, so the website is down. That draft was not what you guys passed. Because I caught all those negatives after he had uploaded some stuff. But basically the last month and a half of the website has been lost. When the website was put back up, it was still letting everyone know that the village offices will be closed for Martin Luther King Day. So you can't go based on anything that's on the website right now.
Could you send me a copy of the?
I'm happy to, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that all went down like the last week, and he's been trying to Brett has been trying to put it back up, but it's been lots of fun.
Eligible expense under ARPA.
We can certainly look into it.
Go on.
So David, you were saying that a couple of options could be like, or the one that I've gleaned onto is facilitating a loan, essentially, right?
Right.
From the general fund for this purpose, that at the end of the year, once we know how numbers have shaken out across the board, we would either be able to forgive part of or all of based off of income from other streams that could offset. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right, that was the option that makes, I think, the quickest answer right now is that we're gonna allow it, we're gonna pay for it out of the reserve,
Okay.
but not that we're just forgiving it, we wanna sit at the table with the police department and figure out if there's anywhere we could trim or any other parts of their budget that will be able to cover part of it or all of it.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because that's what we do anyway.
Correct,
Right.
that was your answer, your
Yeah.
answer was to us,
Yeah.
that that's what we're trying to do anyway.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page with that, like that.
So if I may
That's
make
what
a recommendation, how you would do that practically is to amend appropriations for the DEA fund. In my understanding, let me ask a question. Chief, in my understanding that this the initial setup of Sundance would be a DEA eligible item?
We could purchase
Okay.
it that way. The upkeep, I would budget through.
Upkeep, we can talk
Right,
about when we
upkeep.
talk about the budget in July and then October, but I'm saying in the initial setup, we could appropriate, the council can appropriate whatever it is, $17,600 and something dollars, can appropriate that full sum out of the DEA program. Then the general fund can do a fund, this is exactly what I just learned how to do this, and we didn't do this for many years, so please excuse me for tooting my own horn, but we have done this for the fire levy I mentioned earlier today. We're currently doing it for the police levy because we haven't received that money yet, and instead of those expenses falling on the general fund, it stays in the police levy, it just will be filled in once the money comes back in from the county. We could do a similar setup where the DEA fund is saying, we're saying that Chief Campbell has said that this is a DEA fund eligible expense, and we want to spend it out of the DEA fund. And as long as the DEA fund gets the budget receipts that it was supposed to get for the year, then that expense would be covered out of the DEA fund. It wouldn't come out of the general fund at all, wouldn't come out of the reserve at all. Now, the chance the council would be taking, which again, if that's what you guys are discussing, how much would the general fund or the reserve cover the difference, would be if receipts are not as high in the DEA fund as what should be, what is generally averaged and projected. So how much of that comes out of the general fund? That's a conversation which we could have in July, depending on where receipts are. Now, so far receipts are not great for the year, just full transparency, but my understanding is that that's a court administrative issue, that it's a known thing. So that could be solved very soon.
What percent of the DEA, I mean, we might not know this, but what percent of the DEA fund might be coming from stops that involve marijuana that might drop significantly to recreational?
Zero. Marijuana was
Zero.
never
They're
zero.
not going after felony drug dealers, they're not going after those misdemeanors, that'd be county and mayor's.
That was a while ago that they stopped the marijuana.
But I think that this fund advance could be a solution where, again,
So,
the general fund is advancing the money to the DEA fund. The DEA fund is technically making the purchase. So it goes under the
I
DA
agree.
fund.
And this is, yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way to move forward. And this is how, when I think we have variances or we have asked to go out of the reserve, this is how we should think about handling it. How can we loan the money with a promise of like getting it back, because we can't keep depleting the reserve.
It goes back to the same principle that you spoke to earlier, Eric, of, taking a 0% loan so that we can keep growing our savings at 5%.
Right.
Like, I feel like this is that same principle.
But again, the chance the council would be taking is that if the DEA fund does not receive all that money, then it becomes an expense. The transfer out that was an advance, it becomes an actual expense from council. So as long as council's comfortable with that, then
Now, and the flip side will be.
the flip side would be that council gets all the money back. The general fund gets every penny.
Let's say we don't take that route,
Yeah.
right? What's
So
the idea?
So then the other way, this is the way we classically do it, is that the police department would have, well, not the police department, the general fund would have a new line item called, well, not a new line item, but it would just go into an existing line item, which is for technology or for which one would I put it into? Yeah, either computers, and the money would just be appropriated straight from the reserve there.
So if we do that way, we're for sure losing the money out of this. If we
Correct.
do the other way, it's a chance.
Correct.
Right? So then we do the other way.
I agree, but it's not up to me to agree. I'm telling you, these are the options.
My question is like this: if the DA fund does not fulfill the full amount, meaning we don't get receipts that high, but we could find other avenues to get it to notch a few $1,000s off from the budget, would be able to appropriate it then, correct?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry, I apologize.
If the DA fund does not hit expectations, right, and it comes out to be that they only cover half of this, right?
I would think
Then
that-
we could find other places where we might be able to pull. a couple
or to
thousand.
say that yeah, meaning however, yes,
At that point, we can make a decision if that's.
correct. I mean, that would, I would assume that that's a conversation for either July or October.
All right, so just to summarize what, and then we're gonna put forth a motion to send this up to council, will be is that we are gonna loan the money, in different words, meaning a cash advance from the
A fund
Reserve.
advance, funds transfer.
fund, what is it called, funds transfer advance?
Fund transfer advance, yeah.
Very good. Two,
Fund advance transfer, I don't remember, I'm sorry.
one of the three, move it over to, move that into the DA fund, let the DA fund pay for this initial payment to get the program up and running. And then towards the end of the year, we'll see if the DA fund will cover it, or if not, we'll make then decisions of how will we cover that amount. Therefore, I put forth the motion for the following to move this up to council.
David,
based on
before we
our
move it up,
conversation.
could we add on to that we would also look into how we're gonna fund it going forward as well, not just wait to figure it out?
That was what the.
Yeah,
what
going
the-
forward, it stays in the DA fund unless.
Correct, so the police chief did hint to that, I don't know if you realized he was running into that, was the mayor's court has a computer item there, where the money goes to the computer, that will be able to get some of the $4,000 that comes in a year. But that will be something that will be able to move over to there, and there'll be other places where we're gonna have to look towards the end of the year, where we could go ahead and appropriate for the next year to keep it. So do I have a second?
Second.
All right, are we all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have a recommendation to council to allow this. Next step, that would
Thank
be,
you, guys.
Can I just say something for the record, real quick? So I know that this was a very hot topic of debate in the last council meeting. I know, and I want to echo Brittany's thoughts or sentiments from the executive committee meeting, an hour and a half ago. But I do want to say that we are not at all questioning the fact that you need this and the fact that this is integral to being able to perform your job. This isn't us being anti-police or anything like that. And so I want to just further reiterate that this is about transparency. This is about following policy or procedure and all of that. So yeah, just reiterating. I was wearing my community engagement hat with the last meeting. Now that I'm in this committee, I wanted to second that sentiment.
appreciate that. Very nice. All right, Favorite part of the whole entire day.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
You have to announce the next one first. You have to announce it.
I second it.
It was a silent second.
I said second. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
You will have to announce for the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, next meeting. No, it was on the agenda, we approved it.
Yeah.
Say in the future.
Sure.
Monday,
Not
April
when it's
first
an
at
hour
7
and a half
p.m.
late.
Okay.
Monday, April 1st at 7 p.m.
Gotcha.
Also,
I
April.
just said April Fool's, yes, same
So you
thing.
show up for that one.
And we're only